Hey everyone, it's Dylan Teggart here with another episode of 360 Insights HR Tech Chat podcast. I'm here today with Ahmad Noordin. Ahmad is a HR professional with 25 years of experience. He's currently the VP of HR technology at a large property management company in the US with around 5,000 employees. He's worked for a couple big names in the industry, such as Ulta Beauty, HelloFresh, and has previously worked in the property management industry. Ahmad, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Dylan. I look forward to having this chat today. And yeah, I think the topic today is going to be very interesting for me because we're, I feel like we're at this crossroads where, the people side and technology side are, there's an inflection point where the industry is going. And it's going to be fun to see where all of this goes.
Right on. And before we get into that, is there anything else I missed in your bio that you'd want to let the people know what you're up to right now or what you've been up to in the past?
Yeah, I see myself as a business and HR practitioner. I spend most of my time with our customers. I go out of my way to, spend more time with the associates, for example, the employees and managers, because really the focus for me is people experience. Obviously, using technology as one of the drivers for it, but having a very solid technical background. I have my ma bachelor's and master's in technology, but also have all of the, your HR certifications. Kind of gives me, kind of what the HR and the employee experience should look like, as well as what technology is required to make it a seamless experience.
Yeah, and that's one of the main things I want to get into with you today is, you have that deep depth of technology and years of experience with it. And oftentimes HR tech teams need to either report to not to HR, but to IT function, or have to work very closely with IT to find maybe a new solution or just in general. Um, so how would you feel is the best way to develop a relationship between a tech team and an HR team?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one of those questions that companies are often grappling with or experimenting with. Now, I've been on both sides of it. Currently, I'm reporting into the IT function, but still spending majority of my time with my customers, HR, as well as other stakeholders across the organization. Now, so obviously, when you're on the HR team, you could be more formally embedded into the HR function. You're very close to the action in terms of what their needs are, and so on. But some of the drawbacks could be that you might be too vested into, the customer, and in some cases, the customer's voice. You may end up mimicking what the customer is really wanting to do versus looking at it from a more agnostic and non-biased standpoint. So, being in IT, it kind of gives you that lens of you're still an insider, but you're outside coming in. And in some cases, especially in my current role, the HR function and some of the stakeholders I work with, they appreciate the fact that they see us as experts and consultants. We're still partners, but we may or may not agree with everything, and that's fine too. Also, in most companies, IT has a strategy, and each function usually has their own strategy. And the goal always is, how do we not continue to work in silos and try to have an overarching strategy as an organization? And so, the fun part for me is, regardless of which side of the aisle I'm on, how do we make sure that we're working towards that overall enterprise goals, and we have more cohesion between the department goals. And so, kind of being in a role where you're in IT, you can look at what all of the departments are doing, what all of their goals are, and start connecting the dots in terms of where you see overlapping technology and where you might be able to do a better job of investing in those tools. And also, when you see an overlap in terms of where the systems that employees have to use, it gives you a much better, point of view, and you can call some of those overlaps and gaps in a more, I would say, comprehensive way. So.
Thing. And I know in your current role, you were kind of brought on because the company wanted someone with your specific set of skills who could bridge the gap between HR and IT. That was a big priority for them. Um, how would you recommend to someone who maybe is not as tech literate as you, but is looking to become more tech literate or looking to enhance their skills in terms of technology knowledge so they can have a better relationship with IT or tech? What would you say is a good starting point, and where do you think people can kind of further deepen their knowledge?
Yeah, that's another great question. Now, when I started in the, 25 years ago, you had to, go to school, get your degrees, and that technological um, skill set only was only offered to few folks. Now, obviously, it's been democratized, so a lot more everyone has access to getting those technical skills. Not only that, but these applications that used to be much more technical in nature, where you had to learn how to do programming and coding and so on, more and more of the industry is coming to a point where you should not have to do coding. So then the no code, the low code applications is where things have been going. So it makes it easier for someone who is on the business operations side or on the uh, practitioner side to say, hey, it's no longer, I don't see this big hurdle where I have to go get a degree in computer science like I did, for example, or go and learn programming languages to try to crack the nut in how to make things more efficient and seamless for the users. There are many applications out there now where you're able to, the cliche of dragging and dropping and obviously the education side of it, being able to go on YouTube and LinkedIn and learn all of these things that in the past, again, only a few folks knew how to get to that information. So I would say, the world is your oyster. There's a lot of great education material there, some formal and some informal. And I think the best way to do it is try to figure out how it can practically make an impact either at your organization or at a more personal level. I think a lot of times when people are trying to learn a new topic, let's say artificial intelligence, just that word itself, uh, folks either are cringing or getting confused, or there's an aura to it, but there's also a lot of ambiguity. And, the best way to kind of go about those is try to figure out what you're thinking about solving for and then see, okay, now how do I approach learning about this topic and how it can solve for what I'm trying to do. And we can, it's just me working with different vendors, especially more recently, I can tell that they're trying to get in the heads of those customers as well in terms of how is the customer thinking about the business problem, and then how can we present our solutions so it's not as obscure and it's more practical and more tangible. So if you're trying to learn because you want to apply it to a tangible problem or opportunity, that's going to really get you much further than just trying to go and read a bunch of articles and trying to connect the dots and make sense of it.
Interesting. So communication with vendors, you think, is a big part of it as well?
It is. And I know that there are tons of vendors out there, and you can talk about any part of technology, especially even in the HR technology ecosystem. But the more you're out there, the more you see how the industry is evolving and how the vendors are pivoting, not just, all of the new players, the startups, but especially how the larger ones where they're investing and where they're putting their bets in terms of where the industry is going. Because, when you're a startup, you can just pick a niche field and say, okay, we're going to go after improving onboarding experience. They can go all in on that. But if you're, much larger vendor, it's more unwieldy for you to just turn on a dime. And so for them, they have to look at their long-term roadmap, look at where their investments are, look at the large teams they have, sales and support and product teams, and then try to determine where they want to put their bets for the next quarter, for the next year. So it's good to get an idea from kind of your startup and smaller organizations that are focused on kind of those niche processes. but then also the larger ones, because they're the ones who are having to put a lot of money where their mouth is in terms of where they think the industry is going.
And I'm just going back a tiny bit. You mentioned more and more of the industry is not relying on coding, so which is making it easier for practitioners. Why do you think that is? And in the past, it sounds like you know how to code a little bit, but why do you think it's kind of being phased out?
Yeah, I think one example I can give you is if you think of people analytics, when I remember, and this is still happening in most companies, right? You're spending the technical team is spending a ton of time with the business in trying to create this perfect dashboard. Let's say this HR operations dashboard that's going to give you turnover, headcount, your diversity numbers, and maybe some compliance related things, and so on and so forth. A lot of work gets put into kind of building this dashboard. And with the metrics and these fancy graphs, maybe you're using a visualization tool, um, and you spend so much time on it. You ship it out the way the customer wants it, and the business need changes. Very quickly, even the head of HR might need to pivot and say, okay, yesterday I asked you for this because our priority was we're going to go after improving turnover. Today, looking at where we need to go as a business, we need to focus on how we need to improve compliance. And all of a sudden, the things that you spend so much time building, custom building, creating, having a lot of code and programming behind, gets is not as relevant. And so because I guess, need for speed for what the business needs is so fast, if the or if departments like HR are not able to quickly pivot and respond to business needs, then they're the ones who are going to be left behind and not have that seat at the table. So if I'm an HR practitioner or if I'm an HR executive, how can I quickly make sure that I stay on top of what the business priorities and needs are as they're changing all the time? I need tools that are able to quickly get me what I need. And if we decide to go a different way, I don't have to go and, get a bunch of people to do a custom development or go get another vendor, because that system is no longer relevant. So just that the business need and the speed of how things are changing has forced HR practitioners, has forced IT, and has forced the vendors to try to figure out how to just get things shipped out faster.
Gotcha. Interesting. And so, getting into solutions and kind of picking one that's right for you. I know uh, you kind of emphasized in the past, choosing a practical solution that's practical for your business. So but it's easier said than done. So what are kind of the borders or the framework you put up when doing that? What's the lens you're looking at it through?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say that when I engage with vendors, I like to be very transparent up front in terms of what we're trying to achieve. In some cases, we're approaching vendors and telling them this is an education exercise. We're trying to understand an industry. We're trying to understand, a technology. And by no means are we expecting to, sign something and buy a product. This is just an exercise to get more educated. And when I do that, the vendors obviously, they still hope and pray you end up, buying their product. But their mindset is now focused on making sure that they align the right resources to make sure you're educated. They'll bring folks in who can help you understand the technology and real use cases and so on and so forth. And you're going to get a little bit less of the salesy part of it, which obviously is there as well. But they'll just be, you're going to spend more time with folks on the vendor side who are going to be educating you, because that's really what you're trying to do. And from a vendor standpoint, that gets them in the door. Allows them to come in and say, as we're educating you on this, we can, obviously get into more of how we can solve for some of your business problems. So just being very transparent with the vendor in terms of what you're trying to achieve. Because often, if you don't and you just get on a call, the expectation is you have a business need. They're going to ask how soon are you looking at, buying the technology, and they're already, light years ahead of you in terms of getting a contract signed, and you're still in I don't even know what your technology does, and I don't even know if I have a need for it. Just being very clear and transparent is one thing. The other thing is that depending on the vendor itself, I approach them very differently. So if it's kind of you're going after a large, HRIS system, then, you want to have a more robust RFP process and supplier selection process. And you pick those vendors, whittle down that list, and you send them your requirements in advance and see how they're going to respond to it. You make sure they orchestrate their demos to meet your needs, and they're trying to show you how they're going to solve for things you're looking for, so things are not canned. So I put in a lot of time to make sure the vendors are successful, and we're successful. The customers, the stakeholders who are looking at these technology solutions and reviewing the RFP responses and so on it's very custom to what our business needs are. And the real reason is because, when you're a large vendor and you have these large, portfolio products, you're not going to change that technology for us. You're going to, it is what it is, right? Obviously, you can go on their community board and put an idea in there and wait for the next release, but there's no way I can make any of them change where they're going with their technology. Now, if you're a smaller vendor where you're a startup, you're still trying to get some customers, you're still trying to even build your product, that I enjoy that part even more because many of them are open to creating, proof of concepts, trying to understand your business workflows and working alongside you, almost co-developing with you, and because they're trying to create, improve and create their product so that it's more marketable, and they're getting free advice, they're getting free, consulting from customers who are sharing their business problems, and they have access to some of your data, and they're able to play around with it and try to solve for it, and then take it, to a larger scale with more customers. So with them, I spend more time in making sure that they're ready to be that partner, that it's not a canned solution, and they're going to just try to sell us the licenses. And if they are open to spending time with us, doing proof of concepts, talking about our business problems, and even telling us where their product is going and is not going, and how it may or may not suit our needs. Those are the qualities that I look for vendors. But if I realize it's not a partnership, it's more of this is kind of what this product is, and really just trying to get you to buy that product, then, I kind of shy away from that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like also a factor of all this is that I've been noticing, at least, is that the industry seems to be experiencing kind of consolidation across the solutions, and with budgets maybe tightening a bit because of the uncertainty of the economy,
Mhm.
full suites appear to be making a bit of a comeback. Um, and I know for you, you work in an industry that has a bit of a high attrition, and you've made an interesting point in the past of when you have that high attrition, you want a solution that's kind of not overly sophisticated and that you can kind of get into it really quickly. Um, you know, do you feel like a full suite solution makes that a lot easier? Well, oftentimes, and when picking a full suite solution that is not overly sophisticated, for the average employee, does that change your process at all?
It does, and I think, yeah, it is making a comeback, and I'll even tell you that from my perspective, the full suite with bells and whistles, I think customers are starting to get tired of that because they're realizing they don't need all those bells and whistles, not just because they're paying for things they're not using, but it's overcomplicating. the experience that the users are having. And so, to your point, right now, from my purview, what I can see is simplification is the game. No one is going into a system and trying to see how sophisticated it is. They're trying to go and see how simple it is, how quickly they can get stuff done. And obviously you can compare it to your, how your apps on your phone and those types of things. That's really what they're looking for because they're also consumers who are, they're not just employees, they're consumers. They have access to all of these other non-HR applications that, in one click with they can, face ID into something and um, uh, you know, um, do something with their bank in, 10 seconds they can get something done. Um, and they're expecting that similar experience with, employee systems or people platforms. Now, obviously, they understand that it's not going to be the same. We're not going to be, these systems are not going to turn into Netflix or Apple and so on. But they're not even looking for it to be slick. They're looking for it to just be simple. If I am an employee or a manager, I have very little time to figure out how to create a job description up post a rec, go through the approval process, and then actually have the job get posted and then go through the interview process and electronically do the video interviews or Zoom interviews or on-site interviews and take all of the responses from that and collaborate with others and try to get to a point and then go through the offer letter stage. Just that one part of an employee life cycle or what a manager has to go through can be so overwhelming for them, especially if they're not hiring all the time. Managers, hopefully, knock on wood, they're focused on, reducing attrition. And so if you're not hiring every day, if you're not hiring every month, every week, or maybe every month, you shouldn't have to remember how to hire someone, onboard someone. You should be focused on how to get more customers, keep your customers happy, sell the products, and so on. And so, what is the quickest way for them to go in there and hire someone, onboard someone, and do it in just a very seamless and simple manner? And same thing for the employees. The more sophisticated these systems get, employees just get stuck. They get stuck somewhere in that process, and then HR or someone has to come and unstuck them and try to nudge them through into that next workflow. And it would be, so I think that's where the industry is going to, not just consolidation, but simplification.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, in terms of where you see the industry is going, just with the last couple of minutes we have, what are some future trends you're seeing out there and you're keeping an eye on?
Sure. And I remember, a couple of years ago, and it's still a big trend, obviously, people analytics. But I think people are now moving towards looking at artificial intelligence and looking at it more broadly, how artificial intelligence can take, the portfolio of systems we already have. In most companies, you will have that, consolidated full suite that's probably taking care of, 60, 70% of your employee processes. And then you still have 30% of things that are happening in, six, seven other systems, whether it's hiring or doing employee engagement surveys or reporting tools and offboarding and compliance systems and benefit tools and so on. And so, I think we've gotten to that point where we're like, we know that's going to be, it's here to stay. There's no way a full suite can take care of 100% of the employee and manager or even HR's needs. You're always going to have a bunch of ancillary systems. So now the question is, how do you find that wrapper? How do you find a platform that can connect to all of these different systems and offer one experience for the associate and for the manager. So if I'm a manager, instead of me logging into, a background check system to see where that person is in the drug and background process or in the I-9 system for the I-9 process, just to kind of get them moving along in the onboarding process, hiring and pre-hiring and onboarding process. Imagine if I just had one platform where there's a search button and I'm just asking, where is this associate? And then, if there's a task I need to do as a manager, I can just, in that same box, I can say, I approve. And, the Now I think the term that's being used is agentic. So these agents, can automate these workflows. They can go and do these tasks on managers or employees or HR's behalf. I can see very practical uses for it. And again, it goes back into if I'm a manager and I have to do 20 tasks, is there a way I can just do 10 and someone else can do the 10 for me if certain criterias are met and they're no-brainers? So, if there was a way to do that, and that's the promise that, AI offers, which is that perhaps there is an agnostic system, a wrapper that's sitting, on top of all of these systems. It's able to pull data from different systems and give me the analytics that I need, versus me having to create dashboards and reports in different visualization tools and have integrations with different databases and hard integrations. Wouldn't it be nice if these, I can just go somewhere and just like you're using ChatGPT or Google Gemini, it goes to whatever systems it needs to go to tell you how much PTO you have and how to, take some time off without having to go into those systems. And as long as those guardrails are in place and the data is secure, and I know a lot of these vendors are focused on making sure data is secure and there's the right security accesses there, and you have and these are based off of company policies, not just something that people can just go ahead and do. So I just see kind of artificial intelligence as this general wrapper that will continue to help us improve how to get to that data, get to the insights, the actionable insights, to help us automate a lot of the workflows because we know we're never going to have just one system. And just overall trying to streamline that employee experience so they don't have to figure out where to go to ask a certain question or get a task done. They just go to one place and then that box or that portal helps them with whatever their needs are. So I just see that big push, and I've been meeting with multiple vendors, and I see they're trying to figure out how to go from just your, HR chatbots that do one or two things or go look up certain things in a document to now go and you can create custom agents and, it can go do multiple things for you, multiple workflows even.
Yeah, I think that ease of use is really what people are looking for, and simplifying and maybe removing those mundane tasks just with a couple clicks of a button. I think everyone's kind of seeing the fruits of all that coming in now, and it's exciting to see how much more robust it gets because I think everyone's itching for that to happen in their life, just to get rid of a couple tasks that they can't stand doing anymore.
Yeah, and Dylan, I'll just add the challenge will continue to be with for these vendors. Um, how can the customer show the ROI? Because productivity, yeah, there's a productivity gain, there's an employee experience gain, but how can you turn that into hard dollars so that you could make a business case for these types of tools? And that's where I think that partnership between the vendor and the company, the customer, makes a whole lot of difference. Because if it's a platonic relationship, that's not going to happen. They both need to be kind of all in and saying, we're going to make this marriage work. We're going to really try to figure out what the benefits are and try to find not just the intangible, but the tangible benefits so that the executive team and finance and so on, they actually see those returns coming in. And it's not just more smiley faces because people are more happy using less tools. There has to be more tangible ROI, and I know vendors are focused on that as our customers.
Awesome. Well, Ahmad, thank you so much for joining me. And it's been a really insightful discussion. If anyone has any questions for you, is there a good place for them to reach out to you or
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is probably you can just type my name in and I should pop up on LinkedIn, so that would be great.
awesome. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in and Ahmad, thanks again.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.